In the wide desert where the sun spills gold across the endless horizon, where the sands move like whispers of time and the wind carries the fragrance of forgotten caravans, the figure of Fazza appears, not merely as a prince, but as a poet whose soul is bound to the eternal companions of the desert, the camels. He watches them stride with patient grace, their shadows stretching across dunes like ancient calligraphy, their eyes reflecting both gentleness and strength. To him, the camel is not just an animal but a brother of the journey, a symbol of resilience, loyalty, and love woven into the heart of Arabia. From their long eyelashes that guard against the storm to the rhythm of their steady steps that echo the heartbeat of the desert, every detail is poetry in motion, and Fazza lets his words rise like mirages, flowing without end. He remembers the tales told under the moon when tribes gathered around fires and spoke of camels as treasures, gifts of survival, bridges across distances where hope was scarce. He remembers how his ancestors leaned upon them, trusting their endurance more than the map of stars. Each stride was a promise, each breath a prayer, and each soft sound in the silence of night was a lullaby sung to weary travelers. Fazza inherits this reverence, and when he writes, it is as though he takes ink from the wells of their dark eyes and pens verses on the desert wind. He does not call them beasts, for that would be too shallow. He calls them guardians of the soul, bearers of patience, teachers of humility. The desert would be incomplete without them, as incomplete as the sky without its stars, as incomplete as a poet without his muse. Fazza imagines them rising in the dawn, their bodies glowing with the soft red of sunrise, their long necks swaying like graceful dancers, their steps pressing marks that even the storm cannot erase. He thinks of the bond between man and camel, unspoken yet eternal, a bond stronger than words, born of survival, nurtured by love, tested by time. To mount a camel is to rise into history, to feel the rhythm of the earth beneath, to know what it means to trust another life with your own. Fazza writes of their patience, how they kneel with dignity, how they rise with quiet strength, how they carry burdens without complaint across distances where even shadows grow tired. In their eyes he sees the reflection of the desert's wisdom. In their hums he hears the songs of ancient tribes, and in their steady breathing he feels the lull of timeless journeys. He watches them move in caravans, each following the other with loyalty, each step like a verse in an endless poem. He speaks of how their hooves strike not only sand but also the chords of memory, awakening echoes of journeys taken by his forefathers, of battles survived, of loves carried across the dunes. He tells of how the camel is a metaphor for love itself, enduring, patient, steady, unwavering in the face of storms. In the silence where the last verse faded, the desert still called, its breath a prayer that reached from horizon to horizon. The sands were not empty. They were alive with memory, with echoes of caravans, with the whisper of camels walking slow and proud under the endless sky. Fazza carried those voices in his chest like a beating drum, each step a verse, each sigh of the wind a reminder that poetry is not written with ink, but with the journey of the soul. He wrote out where the stars bent low to kiss the earth, where the moon silvered the backs of his loyal camels, and the night itself seemed woven with threads of destiny. The camels moved with patience, their necks arched like the bows of forgotten harps, their eyes deep pools of silence reflecting eternity. To ride beside them was to feel the rhythm of an ancient prayer, a song that was older than kingdoms, older than crowns, older even than the name of man. Fazza knew their breath, their stride, their stubborn devotion to the desert's truth. He sang to them in verses that only they could understand, verses that spoke not of wealth or power, but of endurance, loyalty, and the long road that asks nothing yet gives everything. And so the poetry flowed, endless like the dunes, unbroken like the horizon. He spoke of dawns when the desert blushed with fire, when the first call to prayer rose from the heart of silence and the camels lifted their heads to greet the rising light. He spoke of afternoons when the heat was fierce, when every shadow became a blessing and the air trembled like a mirage. Yet the caravan pressed on without complaint, step by steady step, teaching patience to the impatient, courage to the weary. He spoke of nights when the fire cracked under the stars, when stories unfolded in smoke and sparks, and the camels rested with folded legs, dreaming of tomorrow's road. The desert taught him that poetry was not a choice but a destiny. It seeped into his skin with the dust. It entered his lungs with every breath of dry wind. It carved his heart the way the storm carved the dunes. To be Fazza was to be more than a prince, more than a man. It was to be a vessel for words that belonged to everyone and to no one, words that belonged to the desert itself. His poems were not just written. They were ridden. They were carried across miles of silence. They were sung into the ears of camels who bore them with dignity across the endless expanse. And still he dreamed. He dreamed of love as wide as the horizon, of loyalty as strong as the camel's step, of hope that rose and fell like the dunes. His heart was not chained by palaces or bound by crowns. It roamed free in the wilderness where every grain of sand was a verse and every gust of wind a chorus. He rode not for arrival but for the journey, not for victory but for understanding, not for applause but for truth. The camels walked with him, through storms and silence, through hunger and plenty, through loneliness and brotherhood.